nice little chap. It was cleared dairy country. It was all pasture except for a very small grove of stringy barks and the occasional shade tree. Just not far away, there's dense bush. It's mountainous, there's steep. People live there and they don't even walk around their properties because it's so steep. There's lots of gullies and a very good place for someone like him to hide. My daughter and I used to take the horses for rides up the hills, and we'd ride for miles. We came from the Tolly Road up a really steep bit and we came up onto the top. We were just walking along on the horses, relaxing after this ride up a steep hill, and the horses stopped and put their heads up. And we looked to see what the horses were looking at. You know, it could have been a mad cow running at us. Sally said to me, "Mum, it's a Hairyman." You know, he was. And he was really close. He was just like 20 metres away. And the horses didn't panic. And this little fella, he zigzagged in front of us like probably running 30, 40 metres from one side to the other. 3 to 5 times he zigzagged in front of us. Then he went into a very small grove of stringy barks, and his hair was that sort of red colour like stringy barks. And I said to Sally, "Let's ride up there and see if we can see him." It was only like 5 metres square, this little clump of stringy barks. Nothing. He wasn't there, just gone. Couldn't believe it.
But when you say gone where?
We couldn't see him. I don't know. Vanished.
Could he have actually moved out of your line of sight or not?
No. It was a cleared area up on top of a hill. It was all pasture. He had nowhere to go except for those stringy barks. And we were pretty bold. We rode up there. I wasn't afraid. I just wanted to have a look at him again. And we got there and he'd vanished. And I can't explain it. What did he do? He wasn't leaning up against a tree to hide himself. The trees were only about 20 centimetres across. Each tree, each sapling, they weren't big. He wasn't... He had nowhere to hide. There was no lantana or anything. Nothing. It was just a very small grove of stringy barks. He just vanished. I can't explain it.
Where was this thing, like you came up to, you mentioned the top of a hill, and you've been riding for some time after you hit the top.
Yes.
But at what point did you notice the thing, and where was it in relation to you?
We were riding towards the east. The horses stopped. They looked to their right. It was all pasture. He was out in pasture all on his own. Then he zigzagged. He ran from our right to the left, to the right, to the left. He might have done left, right one more time, from the right to the left, to the left to the right, to the right to the left. Then he ran into the stringy barks. He was probably looking for cover, but I felt like he wanted us to see him. Because he could have just run off, couldn't he? But he ran in front of us. Something I'll never forget. I said to Sally, he runs like Kathy Friedman, athletic. He ran like Kathy Friedman, rhythmic strides, the way he's moving his arms. He moved beautifully. And he wasn't running as fast as he could. He had a bit of speed up, but it was rhythmic and beautiful to watch.
This sort of zigzagging, as you're looking at it, you kind of made the point. It seems an odd manoeuvre if a thing just wanted to get out of your view.
I think he wanted us to see him. He must have. We saw him on our right. Why didn't he just run off down the hill and hide in some lantana? But he didn't. He zigzagged in front of us.
This thing zigzagging in front of you, what was the distance between you and it as it's zigzagging? It's still reasonably close? Or
when we first saw him, he was about 20 metres away. When he crossed in front of us, he was drawing away 50 metres at the very most. We were riding the horses. We got into a trot, and he was never more than 40 metres away from us. He never got more than that away from us.
When he was zigzagging in front, in relation to you, this thing, where was the stringy bark trees? Were they off to your right or to your left?
On to my left.
And it eventually ended up there?
Yes. We saw him. We were facing east. He was on our right. He crossed in front of us. He turned and he went back to the right. Then he turned. He went in front of us again. He might have done that manoeuvre once more. He went into some stringy barks. The grove was tiny. It really was. It was the size of someone's lounge room. It wasn't a very big area. It's just some little stringy barks that a farmer hadn't chopped down. Saplings weren't more than, from one side of the, if you cut through them, they would have been no more than 20 centimetres from one side to the other. They weren't big trees. They were just saplings.
How tall do you think this thing was?
Oh, he was only about 4'10". I'll give 5 foot at the most.
Would you have any guess how much this thing would have weighed?
40, 45 kilos. Very slight. I'd compare him with a grade 5 student with very small bone structure, petite build, very small bones.
Just describe this thing in as much detail as you can from top to bottom.
The first thing that got me was you couldn't see a nose protruding from his face. He definitely had a neck, just normal, you know, he wasn't long-necked or no-neck, he just looked normal. His shoulders were not wide, completely lean body. His arms seemed long, maybe, and the thing was his hair was red, but that deep auburn colour like a red setter dog. Not ginger red, he was that auburn, really deep red like a red setter dog. Liver chestnut horse colour. He could have blended well with the stringy barks, but he was a darker red. And I'd say the hair would have been about 2 centimetres long. He was hairy.
Entire body hairy, or were there some parts that were less hairy than others?
Whole body.
And when he was he running like a human at the speed of a human, or like?
Yes. Like I said to you, he ran like Kathy Freeman. He ran like a balanced athlete. For someone his size, he was running like you would in like a 400-metre race, about that speed. I didn't feel like he was afraid of us. I thought he was actually showing himself to us.
What was the sort of vibe that you got during this experience? You know, some people get neutral, some people are scared, some people are shocked.
I just thought, they're real. And we saw one and I'm like, wow, we are so lucky to see this. You know, I just felt, it was like seeing a Tasmanian tiger or something. Yeah, that's how I felt. It was so awesome. I wasn't afraid. The horses weren't afraid. Horses are spooky things too. If it had been a dog running out or something like that, they would have spooked. But they weren't frightened, not at all. He didn't make one noise. There was no sound at all, no scent. The horses are very sensitive to things. If they thought he was a threat, they would have been frightened. They didn't mind. Like I said, we rode up to the grove of stringy barks and the horses didn't falter. You know, they didn't stop and we didn't have to push them. They just walked up to it. They weren't afraid.
Was its arms up running like a runner, or was it down by its side, or?
Oh, running like a runner. He was swinging his arms and legs in perfect rhythm. It was awesome to watch. It was just awesome.
When he was running, was he doing quite a long run? What was the distance he was running as he ran? Was it?
When he was zigzagging, he was probably running 40 metres turn, 40 metres turn. He just did it right in front of us. He could have gone anywhere. Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
What happened after that? Who did you tell, and what was the reaction when you told?
My daughter had a friend who was living about a kilometre away from there. But he's a really staunch bloke and he was a mechanic. He lived quietly, kept to himself. He had seen the Hairyman. And I didn't give a description, but he described the same thing. And he said his dog had been barking at night and food had been going missing from his freezer out in the workshop, and went out and had the spotlight on, and he saw this little hairy man. Then he spoke to a neighbour, some old bloke on a small acreage next door, and this old bloke had had the same thing happen, a hairy man hanging around. It was a little bit eerie, but I think it's the history with the land because there was so much suffering. Not far from where we saw the hairy man, a whole lot of Aboriginals were slaughtered by the first settlers. A lot of Indigenous people were slaughtered in Jiggi Valley.